My guest today was born in Cananea, Mexico in 1916, and he and his family came to Arizona, to Douglas, and in 1926, as a boy, my guest and a couple of his friends were in a park in Douglas where gubernatorial candidate George Hunt was making a speech, and it was during that speech that candidate Hunt said, "One day, one of you young fellows could be governor of Arizona." As it turns out, in 1974, one of those young men, and my guest, was elected governor of Arizona. I'd like to welcome Raul H. Castro.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you for being with us. And one of the things that I talked to Governor Castro about earlier when we had a conversation before we did the program, I said, "How should I refer to you, or what should I call you?" And he said, "Well, those from Pima County refer to me as Your Honor, because Raul Castro was at one time a Superior Court judge in Pima County. Others from Arizona refer to him as Governor. And for those who live back east, it's Mr. Ambassador." So he served a lot of constituencies, and it just goes to show some of the things that he accomplished later in life. But one of the things we want to talk about today are what it was like as a young Mexican-American growing up in southern Arizona, and in a state that was really relatively new. You came here a few years after Arizona became a state, moved to Douglas. What was it like when your family came north to Arizona?
Well, the family was quite large. It was mother, my dad, and 14 children. So there were 14 of us, 13 boys and one girl. So it wasn't easy and it wasn't fun either, I'll tell you.
And not too long after you arrived in the States, your father passed away?
That's correct.
And so now it's a single-parent family, and you were telling me some of the things that you did to get by. Never was there welfare, never was there a handout.
No. Well, that's true. Mother was a midwife. I think she delivered about every Mexican-American youngster in the Douglas, up here at the Porterville area. And I even helped her now and then, you know, to be an assistant. And the rest of the time, my brothers and I was just a youngster, come to Fort Huachuca, the Huachuca Mountains, and we panned for gold. Used a sluice box or either panned for gold, one of the two. There wasn't much gold, but it was enough to put the beans on the table.
And at what point did, you obviously went to school in Douglas, and you were telling me an interesting situation regarding schools there. They were segregated. Well,
yes, you know, I went to school in Porterville, Arizona. It's a Mexican community, 5 miles southwest of Douglas. Strictly a Mexican-American school, Mexican children. The children around the Porterville in the area, Anglo kids, farmers and ranchers, they went to school in Douglas, and they would be bused to school. We walked. So as I was walking from Douglas to Porterville to Douglas to go to school, the bus would pass me and the kids would wave at me, but they wouldn't pick me up. The Anglo kids would go to school in Douglas and we'd walk. So,
how did you feel about that as a boy? Did you have a sense that that wasn't right?
Well, these are all challenges. Yes, I disliked it very much intensely, and started building my personality to the extent that those things shouldn't whip me. And furthermore, they shouldn't make me bitter. I think bitterness is not good. That I should move on and try to prove to the world that I could amount to something. So it was a motivating factor, really.
There was another interesting situation regarding the schools then. There was actually a law on the books regarding this use of Spanish language?
Oh yes, it was a misdemeanor in those days if a student spoke a foreign language on the playground or in the classroom. Well, those classes were 45, extremely large. Yeah, I became a school teacher later on, and you don't have classes 45 students anymore. And our English was atrocious. We had spoke English with a terrible accent, and we'd be laughed on for the very reason. So you can see it was a border community, much like Nogales in that sense.
At what point did you decide that there might be some future ahead if you knuckled down and cracked the books?
Well, I think being in school in Douglas at this segregated school, the teacher came over and put her arm on my shoulder and said, "Raul, you have some potential, but you're not doing it. You're being lazy. You're not doing the work you should do." I recall going home, walking into my home that afternoon, and thought to myself, that teacher must have an interest in me. The fact she told me, put her arm on my shoulder, "You're not doing what you're supposed to do. You can do better," gave me a feeling she was interested in my welfare, that she meant well. And so when I got home, I felt I should go back to school and not disappoint that teacher, that I should be able to do better, and I did.
And you recall the teacher's name?
Yes, Eileen Wright. Imagine all these years. Eileen, I remember her name very, very vividly.
And you told me an interesting story about Mrs. Wright and when you were elected governor.
Yes, I was elected governor of Arizona years in the future, and I was being sworn in, and after the ceremony a telegram came in, and the cable said, "Are you the same Raul Castro I had as a student in Douglas, Arizona?" And I was the same Raul Castro. And this is the teacher that put her arm on my shoulder and said, "You can do better."
And she was by now she had moved out of Arizona.
Living in Seattle, Washington.
And had remembered it. Amazing. Right. Now you went through school, got through grade school, high school. As you're getting ready to graduate from high school, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was high school in Douglas, Arizona, and kids were lined up to give their names for the diploma, how the diploma should be written. And every Anglo kid had a middle name, John William Jones or whatever it was. I didn't have a middle name. And like most youngsters, I didn't want to be different. I want to be part of the team. So I had to suddenly find a middle name somewhere. And I thought of a basketball player, Hector Miranda, who was playing for Douglas High School, big, tall, lanky kid. So when the principal asked me, "What is your middle name?" I said, "Raul Hector Castro." And that name stayed with me the rest of my life, much to my chagrin, because now I don't particularly care for the name Hector.
But you had to, when you became a naturalized citizen, needed that middle name, and so
middle name
Hector
stayed with me. Then when I ran for public office, the name stayed with me, Hector. So I'm Hector till now.
Did he ever know that? That you appropriated his name?
No, never did. Never did.
So you graduated from high school, and you're still in Douglas now. At what point did you decide that higher education was something that you probably
Well,
needed
you know,
to
when
do?
I graduated from Douglas High School, and I was not a bad student. I was in the upper echelon of the students in Douglas. And the principal told me, "Raul, you know, you're living in a border community, and I would suggest you don't go to college because, you know, it's awful hard to get Mexican kids a job on the border. We just can't find jobs for Mexican kids. You'd be wasting your time and your money to go to college or university." Well, obviously, I didn't pay attention to him. I then decided at that time that, you know, to start working in the community. But, you know, that isn't the end of the story. Then the superintendent of schools called me. And he also gave me a letter saying Raul Castro is high-ranking student, et cetera, bilingual. But he also advised that I should not go to college or university because I'd be wasting my time and my money. Well, it was announced to me I felt I wanted to go to school, and I did. It just pushed me forward, really, rather than disappoint me.
And you went to Arizona State College.
It was called Arizona State Teachers College in Flagstaff. I was given a football scholarship. A football scholarship in those days meant that you washed dishes 3 times a day for your meals, and that was my football scholarship.
And you decided, as you had alluded to earlier, that teaching might be a career.
Well, yes, you know, going back to Douglas and to school, the bell rang for recess, and one teacher came to the other teacher, my teacher, and said, "These Mexican kids are so dumb you can't teach them anything." I heard it. It bothered me. It annoyed me. And to myself, I said, "Lady, one of these days I'm going to take your job." And I did later become a school teacher. Yeah.
And there was some challenges, even with a college degree, teaching certificate. Still, the road wasn't easy.
Well, I graduated from Flagstaff, Teachers College in Flagstaff. I had done a lot of boxing as an amateur for 4 years. And again, in college, I wasn't a bad student. I was doing very well at the university. And I was at that time working in Agua Prieta at the American Consulate in Agua Prieta, Sonora, Mexico, just south of Douglas. And one of the people I had met in Douglas came to me and said, Raul, why don't you quit school? Not quit school, but quit your job, and let's go to the University of Arizona and go to school and get a law degree. Well, I thought that sounds very appetizing, but it's a little difficult to do at this particular time. But prior to that time, before I went to decide to go to the University of Arizona, there was a consular inspection in the consulate in Agua Prieta. The consul general from Juarez came over and knew me, knew my background. He said, Raul, my remarks to you today are not meant to hurt you. They're not hostile, they're not negative, I hope they're positive. But you're really wasting your time being in Agua Prieta at the American consulate. I said, why? He said, number one, you're born in Mexico, of Mexican parents, and you know the State Department, you're either from Yale, Harvard, or Princeton, or you're not going to go anywhere. And you happen to be born in Mexico with Mexican parents. It's going to be a little difficult for you. So I followed his advice and quit my job in Agua Prieta with the State Department, decided to go to law school in Tucson.
And when you got to Tucson, more challenges.
Well,
You just didn't walk into the law school.
No, I wanted to go to law school, but I didn't have any money to pay for my tuition in law school. So I went to the University of Arizona Employment Office, and I asked the man in charge of the employment office if I could find a job, if I get a job. I needed a job to go to law school, and my priority was going to law school. He looked at me and says, Raul, you know we can't find you a job. You're a Mexican youngster, and you know we're on the border here in Tucson, and it's impossible. We can't find Mexican kids a job in the Tucson area. Why don't you, he said, go see the Mexican consul. Maybe he can help you get a job. I said, Dr. Kelly, I'm not a Mexican citizen. I'm an American. Why should I go see the Mexican consul? So I walked out of his office, and by this time I was churning a little bit, and I was getting a little excited, and I was getting a hold of the Raul Castro and walked in across to the Liberal Arts College. Follows him, Dr. Harville was then the dean. And I walked up to him and said, Dr. Harville, I can do some service for the University of Arizona. What do you mean? I think I can teach at the University of Arizona. I said, I met most of your teachers at the Spanish department. They're very bright, very intellectual in every sense of the word, but their Spanish accent is not very good. So they're doing a disservice to the students taking Spanish at the university with that type of an accent. I can improve it. He looked at me and said, you're awful confident. I said, yes, I am. He said, how can you prove it? I said, I just happen to have my transcript in my pocket. Reached over, gave my transcript of my credits and everything else. He looked at it and looked at me and said, you know, I need a Spanish teacher at the university. One of the teachers got married on Friday and won't be able to teach. Classes start on Monday. She won't be here. You've got a job. You're hired. You start on Monday. So we signed a contract. I had a teaching job. Well, I was highly elated. I went across the campus in front of Old Main, and who did I run into? Dr. Kelly, the fellow that told me, Raul, we can't get your job. You're a Mexican kid. I said, Dr. Kelly, you and I are colleagues. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I just got a teaching job. I don't understand it. I said, Dr. Kelly, you never asked me about my background. All you said was you're a Mexican youngster, you're a young man, we can't get your jobs, you know, border community, we can't find your job. But you never were concerned about my background. Dr. Harville was, so now I have a job. And we became very good friends later on, but that's part of the story, really.
Now, at what point, when you graduated from law school, you obviously went to work in Pima County?
Yeah, but I haven't. You've got me now getting a job teaching school at the university, but not in law school. So I had to go to law school and try to enter law school, and Dean McCormick was in the dean, Byron McCormick, who later became president of the university. And he said, I've heard about you, but you're trying to go to law school, but you can't. Why can't I? He said, number one, going to law school is a full-time profession. Being a law student is a jealous mistress. You have to devote all your time to going to law school. And now you're teaching at the university full-time. How can you go to law school? I said, well, I can do it. I think I can do it. Give me an opportunity. He said, no, I can't do it. You can't be working outside and going to law school. And he said, my experience has been that Mexican-American youngsters don't do well in law school. They have a problem. They have a language dilemma. They don't do well, so therefore, it's all against you. So he turned me down. Well, I had a teaching contract. Next move, I called the dean of the president of the university. Said, I have a teaching contract. It's supposed to start on Monday. I'm going to break it. I'm going to cancel it. Cancel my contract. Why? I said, number one, I want to primarily be a lawyer. I went to law school. But they won't let me enroll because I am teaching. And here's Monday. This happens to be about a Friday or Saturday or something, very close. So the president of the university called the dean of the law school and said, look, this young man, instead of asking favors, let him enroll in law school. If he flunks out, flunk him out. But let it up to him. If he does the job, then he's in. So I got reinstated in law school, and that's how I made it.
And the rest, they say, is history. While this was going on, before we pursue it, while this was going on, what was happening with your family? Were they all still back in Douglas, and how did they feel about you being away in the big city?
Well, my mother was, and I have a lot of schools have approached me on to give me some type of a resume on motivation, what motivated me. And I attribute all my motivation perhaps to my mother. Father died, he leaves a mother with 14 children, no money, no income, not American citizens. And mother was always after me, Raul, you've got to go to school, you've got to improve yourself. And she always told me, Raul, he said, you know, we may be poor, but you don't have to be dirty. You go to law school clean. I don't want you going to school dirty. Soap and water are cheap. And I said, furthermore, as long as you can study all night long, as far as I'm concerned, but we don't want this phrase. We don't want to hear about dumb Mexican kids. And I don't want to be a dumb Mexican kid. I wanted to move on. And so therefore, mother is the one that really gave me the motivation, inspired me to move ahead, and et cetera, gave me all the confidence in the world. And, you know, it was hard to leave home to go to Tucson with mother with the children and obligations she had. But she encouraged me every time. She says, you go, you move on. It's your life.
Now, when you graduated from U of A Law School, did you go immediately to work as a deputy Pima County attorney?
No, I opened an office in, at 140, I should remember the address, 144 Nurse Church in Tucson. Used to be an old two-story building there. And I lived in the back room, had an icebox in the middle room, and had everybody had books in one, gave them to me, and I got some bricks and made it appear like a law library. But they weren't law books, they were just books. So people come in, thought I was rather learned, and et cetera, looking and seeing all the books on the wall. But I was alone in that office on Church Avenue. Later on, I met a fellow named David Wolf. I met him in Douglas, who became my law partner. So I became the firm of Castro and Wolf. People would pay me, you know, it's a great world. I look in those past days. Had a lot of Mexican families come in to see me for legal problems, and they couldn't pay me. They pay me with a dozen tortillas or tamales, et cetera, or whatever it might be. But that was enough I was single, I didn't have any obligation. But the good Lord helps those who helps others, and I did. It happened then I became a deputy county attorney after that.
And as a deputy county attorney, obviously, you look ahead and say, how can I improve my situation
Right.
here? Tell us about the changing of the guard and how you got involved in your first political campaign.
Well, the Morris Udall was then county attorney, and I was one of the deputies. And we had a meeting, Morris had a meeting, he was not going to run anymore. And he said, look, I want you to know that I'm not running again, but I am designating someone to run in my place, for my office. I think it was Ed Larkin, who later became one of my partners. And he will be the next county attorney. And I didn't like the way the thing was done. So I walked out of the meeting, went back to my office. In those days, I could be a deputy county attorney and also have private practice. Later on, Morris came in to see me at the office, and he said, well, you walked out of the meeting, why? I said, Mo, you told me that your next person to be designated was Ed Larkin, despite whatever feelings the rest of us had. And I think that's rather dictatorial, the way of approaching it. And I didn't like it. That's why I walked out. And he said, you know, I have a lot of influence with the Arizona Daily Star and the Citizen. And pretty well will follow what I suggest, recommend. So if you're planning on running for county attorney, I'd say that you better think it over twice. It's not going to be a good situation. Well, I thought it over, and he left. Unhappy, but I was unhappy, and he was. I decided to run for county attorney, and ran for county attorney and won by 65 votes.
This was in 1954.
1954, won by 65 votes. So I had a large family, and some of my family was living in Tucson at the time. None of them voted for me. I said, what happened? Why didn't you vote for me? He said, well, our vote doesn't count. What's the use of voting? Nobody thought I could win. I said, who's going to vote for you? You're born in Mexico, of Mexican parents. Who will support you for county attorney? I said, you guys do a lot of complaining, but you don't participate. I'm going to try it. I tried it and won by 65 votes. So every vote does count, really. There's no question about it.
I think the other lesson here is never tell you can't do something.
Yeah, I never cared for the word don't. I think that spurs me on. That bothers me. It just, yeah, that's correct.
And I believe, if my history studies serve me correctly, that you were the first Mexican-American elected Pima County attorney, and thus far the only Mexican-American Pima County
That's probably true. I have never heard of anybody else. Yes, that's right.
So what was it like? Did you have to overcome any kind of prejudices or challenges once you got elected to that office? Did people say, oh, he's going to favor his own race, or how did that go?
Well, initially, that's the thought people had to some extent. But it didn't work out that way. I think that people of Pima County accepted me for what I was and gave me their full support. And regardless of ethnic group, I think everybody supported me very well. But I'm shocked. I was running for, I think, governor and Yuma one day. I couldn't believe this would happen in modern age. I was being interviewed in local station television, and the question asked me by the interviewer was, isn't it true that if you get elected, you'll be getting your orders from the Pope? I said, what? Well, you're Catholic, aren't you? Yes, I'm Catholic, but doesn't mean the Pope comes into play. And it's hard to visualize how some people really go out of rationality by getting involved politically. It never happened, but of course that's it.
Pima County Attorney, you're the county's chief prosecutor, and then one day you decide you want to pass out sentences and run for a Superior Court position. How did that transition come about?
Well, again, it's I thought that I get bored with jobs. If I do something for 2 years and it becomes routine, then it's time for me to quit and leave. And being county attorney, I'd been in that office 4 years approximately. And it's getting to be routine, and it's not time for me to leave. I'm doing a bad job now because I'm getting bored with it. So I decided I better try something else. I did decide to run for county attorney. There were a lot of opponents at the time. And I did run for county attorney and was elected. I had opposition both in the primary and the general election. In those days, Superior Court judge had to run for office. Now they're appointed, but those days they had to run for public office. And was elected, and I guess it's served in that office for about 7 or 8 years. And again, after 8 years, I got bored with the job. You know, I decided, what is hell? What's next?
Well, what's next was serving as an ambassador to the United States, and we want to talk about that in a little while. In the meantime, I'd like to kind of skip a couple of years and then talk about your run for governor. You served as an ambassador under the Johnson administration, then you came back to Tucson, and I assume resumed your practice of law.
Right, correct.
And at what point then did you decide that perhaps it was time to get back into politics?
I had practiced law in Tucson. Now let me think. I became ambassador to Bolivia, to El Salvador first. That's back in '64. I met Lyndon Johnson there too for the second time in my life. He was in my house, and his wife and Linda for about a week in our home in El Salvador. Then I went as ambassador to Bolivia. I resigned as ambassador to Bolivia with President Nixon, came back to Tucson, practiced law, and then decided again to get back in the political life. When I returned from Bolivia, I was met at the airport by John Malloy and a fellow by Loper, who was then the director of the YMCA, Ed Loper and John Malloy. Met him at the airport. He said, Raul, what about running for governor? I said, gee, I'm very flattered, but don't forget, I've been out of circulation. I'm in Arizona for about 8 years now. I was in El Salvador, I was in Bolivia. And people don't remember me anymore. He said, oh, yes, I do. You better think it over if we want you to run for governor. So I thought it over, decided to run for governor.
That was in 1970.
In the 70s, that's right. And everybody thought I was crazy again. A lot of support from Evo DeConcini, the DeConcini family, and other people who came to me and said, look, give it a fling. And the same old story, people thought I was out of my mind. To think that I could run for governor in Arizona, born in Mexico with Mexican parents, and nobody would support me. I couldn't get any votes in Arizona, especially in Maricopa County, and the northern part of the state of Arizona. People assumed that because I was Mexican descent, that I could win because of the Mexican vote, Mexican American. Well, that's not true, because number one, there aren't enough Mexican American votes. In those days, Maricopa County had about 70% Mexican American vote, only 10% voted. Pima County had about 20%, and only about 10% voted. But believe it or not, they did support me. It came into 100%. But I depended on my intuition. This was not my native land. I came here as a young man, and I had done all right to some extent. And I always felt that the American people always liked the underdog. If the underdog could prove that he was qualified and could do a job, a reasonable, decent job, the underdog, I could get their support. I learned that as a boxer, and as an athlete, and as a student in school, that if I was trying and people were convinced I was doing my best, they would support me. And that's the way it turned out. People did support me, Republicans, Democrats, or otherwise, really.
Took you 2 shots. 1970, Jack Williams won a term. 1974, you threw your hat in the ring again and came back and prevailed.
That's correct. The first election, I lost to Jack Williams by 4,000 votes.
Another close one.
Another close one. The second one, of course, it was no problem. I mean, I did fairly well. I was favored to win, and things came my way, really.
As you look back on that particular point in your public life and private life, all the challenges, the people telling you no, you couldn't do this because of your race, you're being a Mexican American, being a naturalized citizen. At this point, how do you feel about that era and looking back on it? Anything prophetic come out of that?
Yes, you know, all those setbacks make me a better person. And I always tell the story about it. One day I met Bill Matthews, was the owner of the Star and publisher, wanted to chat with me, and he said, Raul, you're always very critical of the Arizona educational system. You're part of our system, and you've done all right. I said, Mr. Matthews, I think it's wrong to judge the system by me. I'm a little different. I'm the exception to the rule. The more I get abused, the better I get. The more you insult me, the more aggressive I get, and that's my motivating factor. So I go back to Douglas and Porterville, where I grew up, and a lot of those children were much brighter than I was, more competent, had more ability, and yet when I went back, they were either had become winos or drunks, had been in prison. They could have been saved to society. And the answer is that schools they're not doing the jobs the way they should be to get those people, those groups, into the main challenge, the main factor. And I still feel the same way. I think that's that. So it takes a little good teaching, a little encouragement, a little motivation, and get the person to feel that you're part of the community. You're liked. You move on. You have ability. So I think those setbacks to me had made a better person out of me, really, in that sense. You know, I was a professional hobo for 1 year.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, you know, I went to Douglas. I had my teaching degree, my BA in education. I applied for a teaching job and said, no, you can't teach school. The school board met. We're not going to hire any more Mexican-American teachers. It's out of the picture. And how do I go back home and face my mother, who was looking forward to me graduating and get a decent job teaching school and put the beans on the table? So it broke my heart to go home and tell Mother I'm leaving. I can't get a job here. I have to go. I don't want to go back and work in the smelter. And again, it shows where guts come from. And Mother called all the family into the kitchen, and she sat there, and Father was gone already, and said, Raul's going to leave us. He can't get a job here in town. So he's going to leave the community, find a job somewhere else. One of our brothers, who later became a lieutenant colonel in the Army, raised his hand and said, why don't we go back to Mexico then? If we can't get treated fairly, let's go back to Mexico. Another one, who was a high school teacher in Flagstaff later, also said, let's go back. And here's my mother, who was wounded, was hurt. That was her son, that I was being turned down. The reason was that I was Mexican descent. And she looked at the table and said, just wait a minute. Said, you have forgotten one main thing. We came to this country on an asylum basis. Father came in with all of us on an asylum basis. We lived in this country. We've all gotten jobs one way or the other. We eat. We haven't starved to death. We haven't had any welfare. We're still alive. We've gotten an education. Therefore, if any of you leave this room without doing your duty to Uncle Sam, to this country, then there's the door. You don't have a mother. And that was guts. And I think that sort of thing was translated back into me in the sense that, and she said, don't forget, one door closes, but there'll be another door that will open. And that is so true. If a door closes, there'll be another one somewhere else. And that's been my life. Doors have closed, slammed on me, but others have opened. So.
Well, speaking of opening doors, we've talked about your career in Arizona, former Pima County attorney, former Pima County Superior Court judge, former governor of Arizona. But you also served the U.S. As ambassador to El Salvador, to Bolivia, later Argentina. Interesting story how you got that first ambassador post.
Yes, there's a fellow by the name of Roy Elson, who lives in Sonoita, who had been my student at the University of Arizona and took Spanish from me at the university. And he became Carl Hayden's #1 assistant, administrative assistant. And one day I was already on the bench as a judge, and I was home. Phone rang, and they said, Judge, this is Roy Elson. I want to ask you a question. I want a favor of you. I want you to be the U.S. attorney in Arizona. I said, Roy, what are you talking about? He said, I was told you accept the job as U.S. attorney. I said, Roy, I've been county attorney already. That's a prosecutor. U.S. attorney is a prosecutor. I've been a judge. I'm a judge right now. That's going backward. I don't believe in going backward. I want to go forward. And being U.S. attorney to me is not going forward. He said, oh, we would offer the job already to somebody else on the district court, federal court. And he hesitated. He said, well, what do you want? I said, I want to be an ambassador. Silence. And he said, well, I think we can do it. Later on, Carl Hayden gave me a call. He said, correct, you're interested in becoming an American ambassador? I said, yes. I worked with the State Department in Agua Prieta for 4 or 5 years. I got a feel for diplomatic service. I mean, I love it. He said, all right, young man, we're going to make you an ambassador. I don't know where, but he said. Well, as it was, Carl Hayden called President Lyndon Johnson. And he said, Mr. President, this is Carl Hayden. I want a favor of you. And Lyndon Johnson, being what he was, said, why, Carl, we're good friends. I owe you lots of favors. Anything you want, I'll do it for you. There's a young judge in Arizona who wants to be an ambassador, and I want him to be an ambassador. And he said, what's his name? Raul Castro. He's what? What's his last name? Castro, C-A-S-T-R-O. Gee, Carl, I'm running for President of the United States. This is when President Kennedy got killed. And how can I have Raul Castro with Cuba in the middle of their problems? And Fidel's brother is Raul Castro, same as this fellow. This is not going to help me for my campaign. Well, they came up with the sordid idea that maybe I could use my mother's name, Raul Castro Acosta. I said, never in your life. I'm very proud of my name, and no way do I want to be an ambassador by changing my name. So they decided to leave my name there, and whoever was going to go to Salvador, I feel sorry for him. They put his name out, put mine in, and I ended up in El Salvador.
What was that like?
What was that like? Well, El Salvador is a beautiful little country. I'm very, very attached to it. It's 50 miles wide and 165 miles long, lots of coffee, lots of people, over 5 million population. The upper crust or the elite are very well educated, Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, lots of money. And nothing in the middle, and a lot of poor people at the bottom. But they're good people, hardworking people. The hardest people I've seen in Latin America are the Salvadorans. Very hard workers. And my two daughters went to school, graduated from high school in Salvador. They had to go to school there, so they graduated from high school in El Salvador. And it was a good life. I enjoyed it. A lot of challenges.
What happened, or how did it transpire that you went then from El Salvador to Bolivia?
Well, you know, Vietnam was in its play. President Johnson had a low ebb in his life. He was depressed because everywhere he got booed because of Vietnam and etc. I received a call from the White House saying that President Lyndon Johnson wanted to visit Central America, El Salvador, and be there for a week. But he wanted every president in Latin America to be present. That meant, I got the instructions, we want, depending on you, Mr. Ambassador, to get every president of Central America to be in San Salvador next week to meet with Lyndon Johnson, President of the United States. That meant I had to get on the phone and contact every president, and every president has the rules we do before they can leave the country. They must get their blessing and approval of their parliament. So I'm on the phone trying to contact every president. I started with Guatemala. I knew the President of Guatemala, and I said, Mr. President, I want you to visit me, and the President of the United States will be here. He wants to meet you in El Salvador. And he said, look, we got the guerrilla going on here in Salvador. The communists are taking the country over, a lot of killings, and I can't leave the country and leave my country unprotected. I said, Mr. President, you know, you're only 20 minutes away from my place in Salvador, the capital. I can get you a United States Air Force plane, pick you up for breakfast, have breakfast with us. You can go have lunch at home, pick you up again, and then have dinner with your family in Honduras, rather than Guatemala. I finally convinced him. He said, all right, I'll go. So that's the one on the line. Then comes Honduras. And I called Honduras. His name was President Lopez Arellano, that he was an Air Force general. He had been to Davis-Monthan Air Base in Tucson. And I got to meet him. I knew him. And Honduras and Salvador were at war. He said, I want you to visit us in El Salvador. He said, Mr. Ambassador, we are at war with Salvador. How can I go to enemy territory as president and leave my country this way? He said, you're not coming to El Salvador. We have ODECA. ODECA is a United Central American nations have a building. The land is theirs. Every country has a depository. They have an investment in that building, in that house. It's Central American land. Since you're not coming to El Salvador, you're coming to ODECA, your own country. Again, I persuaded him to come down, and he agreed to come down. Now I move on to Nicaragua. Somoza, Tacho Somoza, dictator of Nicaragua. He said, I can't go. Why not? He said, you know, when my father was killed, the conspiracy was built, was created, it was born in El Salvador in a hotel. And we were afraid that the same people sit around and might try to kill me. I'm worried about security. So then I persuaded him that security was fine, that the U.S. would protect him and watch him, and we would safeguard him. He agreed to come down to meet Lyndon Johnson. So then I ended up in Panama, and Panama was not a problem, so they agreed to come down. Costa Rica wasn't in speaking terms at that time with Somoza in Nicaragua. He said, I'll go if Somoza's not there from Nicaragua. He said, well, they're both going to be there. He said, well, I don't want to be in the same room with him and the whole story. But finally, again, persuasion convinced him you had to come to the meeting. And they all attended. I'm ready to go. I'm chopping at the bit, get other presidents to come to Central America. As fate has it, that evening before Lyndon Johnson was to leave Washington, a group of students from the University of Salvador burned him in effigy in El Salvador. AP and other wires picked it up, and he called me on the phone. He said, look, you promised that you would guarantee my safety. I'm burned in effigy. I'm leaving, and supposed to leave in the morning. I'm not going to go. I said, Mr. President, we've got to maintain relations with Central America. They've all agreed to come to this country, to El Salvador. How can we turn them down now, and we're going to lose relations with them? As much as I can guarantee you, which is not, I can't guarantee anybody's health and welfare to the point, but I can assure you that if you come to El Salvador, you're going to be loved, you'll do well here, nothing will happen to you. This happens to be about midnight of the night before you're supposed to arrive. Then they had an advancement come in to see me, and they said, Mr. Ambassador, we want at least 100,000 people at the airport to greet the president when he comes in. He knows he's very depressed wherever he goes. Chicago was his last stand, and he was booed. And he's at the bottom of the barrel on this matter. I want you to get some people at the airport. He said, I told him it costs money to get crowds if they bust in. Somebody has to feed them, and I assume we have to feed them. I need at least $6,000. Looked at me and says, no, we don't have that money. Well, then you don't have a crowd. I said, you know, you seem to forget that I haven't been involved politically in the United States. I have a pretty good idea what it is to create a crowd, and if I can get you a crowd, give me some money. So he took out $5,000, that's all I've got. So I got the $5,000, the greenbacks, and went to see the Colonel of the National Guard, which was the only organized military unit in that country at the time. So I was talking to the Colonel, and he says, Colonel, I need a crowd of 100,000 people. Well, it's going to be expensive, they got to be bussed in, they got to be fed, hotel. I said, look, don't tell me about hotel rooms. You're not going to put them in a hotel, you're going to put them in a bullfight arena. You're going to put them in a bullfight arena, lock them in, they can't get out, and then give them some tortillas and tacos, and it's going to be the end of the meal. I said, all I've got is $5,000. Well, you take it. He took it. I said, well, go to work and get me a crowd. I said, but before you do that, I want you to understand, I want those people coming into the airport ragged. The poorer they look, the better. Their shirts torn. I want signs saying Viva Johnson. I want the signs misspelled, poor spelling, upside down, etc. I want it to appear as though these are legitimate. It comes from the crowd. Because ABC will be there, NBC, and every TV station in the world will be there. Because the President of the United States will be there. So it'll all be there. And this goes back in the United States. It's going to influence the President and the American people. So I couldn't sleep at night thinking of the crowd, thinking of what's going to happen. Well, that morning I went to the airport to meet the President of the United States and his wife and daughter. And to much to behold, there is a crowd of over 100,000 people at the airport. And it looked like the grapes of wrath. Tattered and torn, barefooted. Lots of signs, Viva Johnson, we love Johnson, etc. Misspelled, just like I thought. The President got out of the airplane. I was at the bottom of the ramp to meet him, and he saw this crowd screaming, Viva Johnson, and the signs and the people. And I could see just a smile. He wasn't very good for smiles, but he was smiling that morning. And his wife came in, the daughter, and we did the greetings, and we get into the limousine. First limousine was President Johnson, President Sanchez of El Salvador, and myself in the first limousine. Second limousine was Mr. Johnson, and my wife, and I can't think of the lady who was Mrs. Johnson's secretary. So off we go with this crowd. It was a tremendous, beautiful boost. Secret Service running beside the car and bringing messages from all over the world. And it's a very triumphant arrival. I was very thrilled, pleased to see that. And so was he, really, pleased.
Now, you served out the term, if you will, under President Johnson, and there was a change in political parties, change in administration. Came back to Arizona, became governor, and this gentleman by the name of Carter ran for president, and you and he crossed paths. Tell us about that experience.
You know, I'll never forget it. You know, it's a small world. I had just been elected governor of Arizona. I had a suite on 7th and Thomas in Phoenix, Embassy Suites. And I was getting ready, it was about 5:30. I had just gotten out of the shower, I was shaving, getting dressed, etc. Phone rang, and when the phone rang, said, "This is Jimmy Carter. Governor-elect, I'd like to see you for about 10 minutes. Could I see you?" I said, "Well, Mr. Carter is fine, but I have a commitment at 6 o'clock. I have to dedicate the Plumbers Union in Tucson. There's a big crowd. I don't want to not be there. I know what you're going through. I promise you, it won't be more than 10 minutes. If not more than 10 minutes, I'll see you." The door, there's a knock on the door. I opened the door, it's Mr. Carter and some assistant with him. Came in and he was standing. He said, "I know what you're going through. I used to be governor of Georgia. I didn't know who Mr. Carter was. First time I heard of Jimmy Carter in my life. So I used to be governor of Georgia, and now I'm running for president of the United States. I said, what? I'm running for president of the United States. In my mind, I thought, well, this guy's out of his mind, out of his gourd. How he's going to run for president of the United States? Nobody have heard of him. In time, the clock keeps on moving, time for me to leave, and I said, Mr. Carter, I appreciate you coming in, but I think you'll have to leave because I've got to be there. I practically pushed him out the door, not realizing that you're going to be my boss.
So he was elected president?
Elected president. He's a man with a lot of confidence. I was in peanut number 1. This airplane was at a peanut. It said peanut number 1, the name of his aircraft. We flew in from San Francisco to Los Angeles. He had to give a speech in Los Angeles. Jerry Brown, governor of California, was there to receive him. And before we landed in Los Angeles, he looked at me, he said, Governor, I want you to be my advisor on Latin American affairs. I think you're well versed in it. When I get elected and take the oath of office on January the 20th, I said, this guy's out of his mind. When he takes oath of office on January the 20th, I had been in Illinois, I've been in Kansas, I've been in California, been in Arizona, promoting Jimmy Carter's campaign. And it didn't look very good. The other thing that I saw was negative. But yet, President Carter was very positive. He looked up and he said, when I get sworn in on January the 20th. Well, I didn't believe it, but then we sat down and chatted, and then Loretta King sat down with us. And by golly, the man was elected President of the United States, just like I was elected county attorney in Beaman County. And so he was my boss. And every time I'd go to the White House, he'd look at me and say, remember the first time we met in Phoenix, Arizona in your room? I don't want to be remembered of that situation. I wasn't very generous or very grateful, I don't think. But he understood it, and we got along well.
So you were offered an ambassadorship then?
Yes, I think initially I was supposed to go to Mexico, and the governor of Wisconsin was supposed to go to Argentina. And the governor of Wisconsin's wife was not feeling well, had some ailment, and wanted to be close to the United States. So in my rounds in the State Department, I met the former governor of Florida, Reuben Askew. He said, Governor, may I see you a minute? I said, yes. He said, would you mind going as ambassador to Argentina? Seems that the governor of Wisconsin can't go to Argentina because illness of his wife, and he likes to go to Mexico. I said, I have no problem with that. I've got too many relatives in Mexico. They'll be on my back if I go to Mexico as an ambassador. I don't want to contend with that problem. It's an albatross. Yes, I look forward to going to Argentina. That's how I got to Argentina.
Now, you told me that while serving some of your ambassadorships, the people of those countries were a little puzzled that you, Mexican-American, were representing the United States in Latin American countries. You
know, that's an amazing thing. In all countries I served, Bolivia, El Salvador, and Argentina, and of course I spent 4 years in diplomatic service in Mexico, they couldn't understand. They were in awe. How is it possible you, Raul Castro, born in Mexico, of Mexican parents, can be the ambassador of the United States of America, the most powerful country in the world? How can you be their ambassador to Latin America? I said, it's very simple. I'm an American. If I'm an American, I can be everything except President of the United States. To them, I was just couldn't quite understand it. But it was a good lesson in civics and understanding that the fact that I was an American, it didn't make any difference where I was born or where I came from. If I'm an American, I am able to be appointed and hold a job. You know, I told you a story about Henry Kissinger.
Right.
Henry Kissinger was my guest in Argentina, Buenos Aires. We were having a cup of coffee in the morning, and his wife hadn't awakened. It wasn't awake yet, neither was my wife. So just he and I were having a cup of coffee. And he looked at me, he said, Raul, he said, you know, you and I can't be president of the United States. Well, I wasn't contemplating it, Henry. He said, well, you know, you were born in Mexico and I was born in Germany. So we can't be president. I said, you're correct, we can't. Then he hesitated, he said, you know, but you don't have the accent that I have. He says, very simple. I'm just brighter than you, that's all. He sort of laughed.
My guest has been former governor of Arizona, former U.S. ambassador, former Pima County attorney, currently still practicing law here in Nogales, representing international interests, Raul H. Castro, who proved, I think, in our conversation that put a challenge in front of anybody and they'll overcome that challenge, especially if your name is Raul H. Castro. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you again next week on Southern Arizona Forum.